applicants. We also have the summary of criteria, which just sort of indicates an applicant with a particular qualification, how many years of experience, etc. they may need to demonstrate. That is, of course, broad across all of our assessment application types. Another really important piece of information, is the ANZCO code information document. That will give an applicant examples of what someone under that code would demonstrate, and we just list the codes that the ACS is authorised to assess. And we also have an application checklist as well, which just reiterates what documentation that you need to provide and what you need to ensure is ready before you apply, in order for it to be decision ready. It's also just really important to maintain the fact that the documentation that we're referring to is current as of today. It can always change. So we do always recommend that applicants are reading the most recent copies of all of the documents that's on the website, especially if you are someone that will save a bookmark. It is better to go directly to the ACS website, to information for applicants. Just make sure you are reading the applicable and current information.
So here's the assessment for me. So based on what we've been given, we're only just going to talk about one particular application type, which we believe would be suitable for you guys. And this is our post-Australian study application skills assessment type. So basically the gist of it is, if you have an Australian bachelor degree or higher with ICT major content and is relevant to the code that you're going to nominate, then this will be the application type for you. With this, you would need 1 year of employment after the completion of that relevant Australian degree. Now, there is a requirement. So with the post-Australian study, you need to meet, we call it the Australian study requirement, ASR for short, and basically it needs to be 92 weeks in length. So if you do have credits and they're from an overseas university, it won't be accepted. It needs to be 92 weeks in an Australian institution. If you do have credits from another Australian degree, then that can be accepted, as long as it's, again, 92 weeks in an Australian institution. So that's probably one of the most important things, because that's what a lot of people fail on, is the course that they do is not long enough, because they assume, it's registered for 108 weeks, but then they've got credits from another course. So this is very important, this part of passing post-Australian study application type.
We also want to sort of confirm too that it is a requirement for the Department of Immigration. So we much rather assess you against that criteria at this end, rather than you go have a suitable outcome, go to the Department of Immigration, and then they find that you don't meet the 92-week requirement. So that's why we do stipulate that you meet that requirement at this stage, just to help you out at that end.
Yeah, this is all on our website as well, which is why we can't stress enough. Read before you reply, or even just phone us in and call us and let us know beforehand if you're unsure. Next one.
Okay. Yeah. So as you may or may not be aware, when you do apply for skills assessment, you do have to nominate an ANZCO code. That is dependent obviously on your visa requirements, and you will need to select a code that's most closely related. Now, because of the complex nature of the assessment process, it's not something that our department is able to advise you prior to applying. It is something that must be determined by the applicant. So in saying that, it is very important that you nominate the most appropriate ANZCO code that is closely related to your individual qualifications and work experience. So in terms of the information that we can provide, that is in the ANZCO code information document that we did mention in the previous slide, and that does include all information in terms of the codes that we assess. It gives you an example of ICT units and employment duties for each occupation, just to sort of give you some sort of assistance in terms of trying to work out which ANZCO code that your qualifications and experience are closely related to.
Employment. So I mentioned earlier.
Can you speak up just a little bit, please?
Me?
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, sorry, a bit far away. Okay, so I mentioned earlier that in addition to the qualification, you need 1 year of employment. Now, how we assess it, we'll give you a bit of a rundown. There is a little bit more to it, but this is just an overview. So it's fairly simple. You basically just need to provide us with a detailed employer reference letter on a company letterhead. Now, what needs to be in there is your start and finish dates, detailed description of your duties, because that's what's used to determine if you're relevant to the code. So it's very important that we get the description of duties, because again, this is where a lot of people fail on. It's not detailed enough, and therefore we can't determine if it's relevant or not. We need to have your hours worked, if it's full-time or part-time. Basically, we just consider anything that's 20 hours or more per week as full-time employment. Anything less, we take as part-time and we don't assess. The country needs to be on there. Needs to be signed off by the HR manager, whoever's providing the letter, and again, all on the company letterhead. There is an alternative. There is an alternative. You can provide a third-party statutory declaration if for some reason you can't get that detailed letter. Again, there is more information in our guidelines about what needs to be in it, but we've just given a little general overview. So you can get a third-party statutory declaration from a colleague. It needs to be at a supervisor level. Just again confirming your start and finish dates, your details of your duties worked. So everything in the employment reference letter you can provide in the statutory declaration from a colleague that you've worked with. Now, if you are providing the declaration, you can provide a piece of evidence, which is either a first and last payslip, a HR letter or service certificate, or a termination letter, depending if you've worked there or you've stopped, basically. And it all needs to be at a professional ICT level. Now, we do get a lot of questions beforehand. We're not going to know until we actually get the assessment, and then our assessors actually assess the documentation and have a thorough look for you, basically. Yeah. Things to remember.
So basically, we just thought we'd write down a couple of facts, just things to remember before you apply. There's a lot of common misconceptions that we do get with applications. So the first one that I would definitely say, once you've got all your documentation, is just ensure that the documentation that you are going to provide in the application is certified. All documentation will need to be certified before you upload those as PDF copies to the online application form. So if you weren't aware, so certified copy is when you take the original document to a legal entity, a lawyer or justice of the peace, or even the post office, etc., can do it for you as well. You take the original and a copy, and they simply just certify that as a true copy of the original document. And so that is what you would then upload. So it would be literally every document that you apply with, so passport or a birth certificate, your qualification documentation and employment documentation, and that would all need to be certified in the application.
Again, we can't stress enough. So when you do go to apply, always read the guidelines first, because again, they can change at any time. We've been lucky so far. Nothing major has changed, but in saying that, definitely always double check the guidelines and all those documents we mentioned previously before applying. If you're still unsure, you can phone us in, you can email us. We're more than happy to help you. If there's anything that you don't understand, we'll rather help you before you apply than you apply and then, something goes wrong, because that's another common thing that goes wrong, is people apply and not understand what things mean. But yeah, we're here to help, basically.
Any questions that you have, if you don't understand anything in the guidelines when you are about to apply, or anything you require clarification on, any of the case officers will be able to assist you. As Bessie said, we do have phone and email correspondence, so anything that you need to ask, we do really strongly suggest you ask it before you apply. It just saves a lot of hassle in the long run as well, and then it ensures that you are getting the best possible outcome in your circumstance.
And then when you're ready to apply, this is where you go. So if you go onto our website and you go to Migration Skills Assessment, click on Online Application, and you can basically start your application. Yeah, any questions?
All right, we got one. I might have to. What's the question? So if someone's got work experience before the degree and not after the degree, does that count?
No.
So for the post-Australian study skills assessment, the stipulation is that that 1 year must be after the completion date of the relevant Australian degree. It can be from multiple employers. It just needs to be at the minimum of the 1 year, and as we said, after the completion date of the qualification.
In saying that, this is just the requirement for the post-Australian. Now, you might meet the requirements for our other application types. It really just depends. We're just giving a general overview of the post-Australian.
So there are other options out there. Just
Yes.
talk to the team.
Yeah. We're just talking about one particular application type. Yeah.
Okay, so one more question, yeah?
Sure.
Yeah. An Australian what?
Study requirement. Australian study requirement, the 92 weeks.
The Australian study requirement with 92 weeks, what's that one?
Yeah.
Does that count towards this?
It does not need 1 year.
Or does not need 1 year, is that right? But that's different to this, isn't it?
Yeah, so you'd have to meet the qualification requirements first, which would be the 92-week requirement. As the example that we're using with the post-Australian study skills assessment application type, you would need that bachelor degree or higher with a major in ICT that's closely related, and then we would look at the work experience. So then the 1 year would need to be after the completion of the degree, and that would also need to be closely related to that.
So I still have 1 year experience.
Yes.
To assess my Australian
degree. Yeah. So they still need the 1 year work experience after the Australian degree.
Yeah, that's right. For this one application type.
Just to assess an Australian study requirement, I already assessed the degree and work experience before.
Yeah. So this is getting a bit.
Okay.
Yeah. I think, but we'll give the team a call. That's what they said. They'll be more than happy to answer questions.
Yeah.
How about professional year, like if they don't have a year experience after our degree, and we choose a professional year after our degree, so how about that?
So if they chose professional year after this degree, would that count?
Yes, we'll accept professional year as well if you've completed it.
Yeah.
And is there any specific criteria for that? Because if you need to get
Is there specific criteria around that, or is that more of a specific question answer that you need to give them?
Is this for the for the professional?
So if they did the master's degree and then did the professional year, are there any requirements around how the two match up?
For the professional year, if you want more information about that, you'd have to speak to the education team.
Yeah.
If you've completed it, we'll accept it. So we can only talk in terms of completing it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. No
Yeah.
worries. I go to you, mate. It was next. And then
Simultaneously, we can study and work. For example, I'm working in a company as a part-time.
Yeah.
And I would like to work for more 6 months, so it'll be 1 year.
So if they're working more than those 20 hours a week now while they're studying, does that count, or is it have to be after the degree's finished?
The work experience would need to be after the qualification was completed. In terms of when an applicant maybe has worked and studied at the same time, for different application types, if it meets the more than 20 hours a week requirement, and I've just lost my train of thought, completely lost what I was going to say.
So what we've talked about is only specific to the post-Australian. If you have worked during your study, it's only a situation because it can be used in one of our other applications.
So there's other options for you there.
Yes. But specifically for the post-Australian, you need 1 year after the completion of your Australian. That's the only requirement. Yeah. That's
You're right, matey? You're right. Yeah, this side. Okay, good. So what type of business can it be? An SME all the way through to multinational for the work experience side?
We really don't have requirements specifying what sort of employer.
Yeah.
We can't really give pre-assessment advice. So we'd be assessing you based on the documentation that you're providing at the time of assessment. Yeah.
As long as it's relevant to the course, no doubt that it's all aligned.
And for the ANZCO code.
And at the end, code, right?
Yeah.
Any more questions? One more.
Like the professional year, or they're the same in terms of year?
So the work experience and the professional year work experience. So the 1 year after the masters, right, and the professional year work experience, are they considered the same thing? Is that what you're asking? They're two different areas, though. Professional year is a different certificate assessment to what they've just spoke about today. So the reason they presented on today is because you're all studying a Masters of IT, right? So there's your ground for skills assessment. How you do that is what they were saying about ANZAC codes and all those other areas. So fundamentally, you're at a level where there's an opportunity to progress with this. It's going to come down to your individual circumstances. But the professional year is a totally different area. Like they said, you can do that after, but the professional year experience and this are two different things.
That's right, yeah.
Any more? No? Oh, one more. Oh, yeah, okay. That's specific around degrees. You're going to have to ring the team on that one. That's specific around placing it in the code. So give them a chat, give them a talk to, because they need to look at all the specific coding. They wouldn't have that. But that's definitely a question to ask them. So the number, get your pen. Here's the number, 02. I know it off by heart. 02 9299 3666 and hit number 2.
I was going to check too.
You've got to call them before 12:30 or 12 o'clock Sydney time, because they take all of the phone calls in the morning and do all of the assessments in the afternoon. So call them before lunch.
We've extended till 5, if that helps.
Oh! Look at that. On that note, we're going to leave that, ladies. Goodbye to the crowd. There you go.
Bye.
All right, take it easy. Thank you so much for today. Really appreciate it.
No worries.
I've recorded this as well. So have a good afternoon and appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
No worries. Thank you. Bye.
See ya.
Bye.
There we go.